thrown into these groups, it sounds like, or looks like to me, we're going to have more problems with these groups learning and coming back out with the achievers than we've ever had. Now, does that sound logical? It does to me.
Well, I think you're right that because what you have with cooperative learning is that it's not you don't group kids based upon ability, right? So you don't put all the really bright, gifted kids in one team and everybody else in other teams, and maybe put English language learners in their own team or something like that. What you have is this heterogeneity of team members, right? So because that is the idea behind cooperative learning, is that the kids who may be a little bit more ahead of the game will help teach the kids who need extra help or understanding, and there'll be this incredible magician's act in these teams, where by osmosis, that knowledge will then flow from one child to the other child because of the discussion they will have, not about transformers, but about mathematical problems, And so, yes, I think that, that you could definitely have kids who have, let's say, English language learners, in teams where, you have, English fluent kids, right? There's no guarantee that you would separate children by their fluency in English. I haven't seen anything about that. And so therefore, what would happen if you had somebody, several team members who were having issues with English fluency, and they were grouped with kids who were fully fluent? I mean, you can imagine that there would be issues. I mean, even if the English language learners knew the subject well, but simply the communication between them might be difficult, in which case it would take time, simply to communicate with each other, away from a child, advancing at their own pace. So I think that is a concern. I mean, again, it's just the general idea of heterogeneous team members, and potential for unforeseen consequences in terms of academic outcomes amongst team members. So, yes.
So do you know if there's any county, let's say countywide, the various counties in California, is there any discretion, let's say for instance, about data mining, sex education, diversity training? I mean, could you do your own like toning down of all that stuff and or choose not to report all the data information?
Well, I think it's an open question to see, because I mean, some of that data is going to be at the state level, and so I can't say for sure, how districts are going to react, because I think that if you talk to districts right now, I think that they haven't really figured out how this is all going to work. So, again, it's I think that you talk to teachers, you talk to administrators, a lot of them are just not ready for Common Core. And in fact, even though national teachers organizations, for example, are very supportive of Common Core, you talk to rank and file teachers, they had very little idea that Common Core was coming down the pipe. And so whether the data at the district level, how that's going to work out, I couldn't really tell you. I think from what Jane Roberts says, the potential is there for this data sharing to take place. And I think the fact that it is not an impossibility, that it is a real possibility, I think that's the thing that should cause us a lot of concern. And
Or for parents to opt out? So yeah, we'll give you our name, but we're not giving you all.
Well, I think it's very difficult for parents to opt out. It's very, very difficult to opt out. I mean, it's not just in Common Core data-related issues. I mean, there's a lot of things that just happen, in the classroom. It's very difficult for parents to opt out. So I would be surprised if the districts made it easy to opt out. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that it's time to opt in. You control your local school boards, you have an opportunity to make a huge difference. You sit at home and complain about it, you're not going to make any difference at all. You're on school boards and you affect policy on how we're going to do things. And I'm the new superintendent last in high school, and I'm telling you, the glass is half full, and the opportunity and the programs we shape here depend on us. They don't depend on people out in LA, because we're not the same as LA, okay? And we're a very different culture, a very different demographic, and there's a very different opportunity. But it hinges on our involvement in the fundamental right of self-governance.
Right.
And if we're not involved, I'm telling you, when we have school board seats, we don't have people running for it, that's really sad. Because we're not opting into one of our basic rights, self-governance. And I think that we need to take a strong reflection on it. Our schools can be what we want it to be, okay? And there are huge opportunities there that we can take advantage of, and I think we need to take advantage of. And I love your message, and there are areas that we'll agree to disagree, but it makes you think, and that's what all schools want to do. We want our kids to be able to think and discern what's right or wrong. We want our kids to have the best opportunities so they can be competitive in careers in college. And we want to create an opportunity for every child. And even No Child Left Behind, because I hated it when it first came out, it raised the bar for all children. Not the best and brightest, all children. Because every parent sends their best kid to school every day, and it's our opportunity to do the best job we can with every child, not the best and brightest, okay? Now that's not to say that we can't offer a great program for the best and brightest, but it's saying that we need to do things. And every good lesson, when it's not working, you adjust it. And what's happening with Common Core is going to be adjusted over time. And I hear people say, because I've had this conversation with staff today, you know, in English we can only do 50% of this. That's not right. Over science, social science, and English, it has to be 50% information-based. I don't see us throwing out good works of literature, because I've studied those. And I appreciated them, and I read them at home, not because I had to, because my parents valued that type of leadership. And I think we live that type of literature. And I think we live in a community that we can continue to develop those basic core values.
I appreciate that very much, you know, and, I think that your message, in terms of having people like all the folks here gathered tonight, to run for open school board seats is incredibly important. I did a film several years ago called Not As Good As You Think, Why Middle Class Needs School Choice. And, one of the districts that we profiled was actually in wealthy Orange County, where a group of parents who were not satisfied with the way their schools were going down there decided to run a reform slate of candidates, and they took every single seat because they organized and they were motivated and they were able to put together a real political force down there. So I think it is really important for people like all of you to then not just hear people like me, but then to try to transform that into action, as you mentioned. I think that, again, the issue is implementation. I would love if that every one of the 1,000 school districts here in California had a superintendent like you. But reality is, there may not be very many superintendents like you. The reality is that there are going to be a lot of superintendents who, would rather not take the inputs of parents, would rather, simply agree with the powerful special interests that have grown up around their districts, that sort of thing. So, and the groups that support Common Core. Anyway, the point of it is that it is important what all of you do at the local level. On the other hand, under Common Core, one of the problems, again, is the fact that a lot of these decisions are not made by local people. That's one of the reasons why we're here tonight, is because under the centralization of decision-making that Common Core promotes, a lot of that decision-making power is not done at the school board level anymore, and it's not even done at the state level anymore. As the discussion about what happened with 8th grade algebra in California shows, it's what happens at the national level that counts. And so, therefore, it makes it more difficult. The farther you push decision-making authority away from the local level, the more difficult it becomes for all of you to have an impact on those decisions. And that's why I titled my book, Obama's Education Takeover, because that's what's happening. Yes?
Well, I was just going to say that sounds great if we didn't have Common Core, we can do all that, but once we do it, we're not going to be able to say what we want. We're not going to have those books. They're telling us what to have, period. So it's not a matter of, sure, if we stand up and say we don't want Common Core, but if we get Common Core, even the tests, I understand what they do is it's not what you know. They give you tests of what you don't know because they're in control of the tests and everything. So we're not going to have this opportunity to say we don't want this or that. We want these books. It's gone. It's done. Because we won't be able to. We can leave it out like this side.
One of the things,
right?
Yeah, one of the things that I mentioned in my book is that, like in California, under our current system of ballot initiatives, right? If you don't like something, even if it's something that's, in a law involving education, you can circulate a ballot proposition, get it on the ballot, and vote about it. Over the last several years, there have been attempts, some of them unsuccessful, but several attempts by grassroots organizations, black to put certain education issues that were passed by Sacramento on the ballot for the people of California to consider. Right? It becomes much more difficult, however, to do that when you're talking about a national regime that Common Core promotes. And so I think that's one of the things that, even though I support, of course, the activism that will increase the level of participation of folks like you on local boards, in the legislature, etc. Again, when you have a national regime, it makes it more difficult to have an impact on that decision making. Yes? Texas, the question is about Texas. And Texas is one of the few states that oppose the adoption of Common Core in their state. Remember I mentioned that in 2010, most of the states, in the summer of 2010, adopted Common Core. But several states did not. One of them is Texas. And the commissioner of education in Texas is a guy named Robert Scott. And so actually one of the things I would suggest for those of you who really want to hear somebody who is at a very high level in their own state talking about problems with Common Core, go onto YouTube and type in Robert Scott, Texas Commissioner of Education, Common Core. And you'll find a lot of his testimony to different state legislatures about why Texas decided not to adopt Common Core. And I have in my book several quotes by Robert Scott. And one of the things he said when he talked about the National Governors Association, Council of Chief State School Officers supposedly pushing for Common Core when it was really the federal government that was behind a lot of it. He said that, and this is a quote by him, by Robert Scott, Texas Education Commission, having the federal government use Washington-based special interest groups and vendors as a proxy for the U.S. Department of Education in setting national curriculum standards and then using the federal discretionary funds under the stimulus program to develop national tests for every child in the nation represents unprecedented intrusiveness by the federal government into the personal lives of our children and our families. And I think that Robert Scott is absolutely right. And he says basically the ultimate goal of President Obama's national standards and testing drive is nothing less than the federal takeover of the nation's public schools. So, I think that, Robert Scott is a young, bright guy, and he would not be saying this thing lightly. if he didn't see what was coming down the pike. And so therefore, I think that it's important for us to hear his voice, not just the voice of folks like Bill Gates, who are using their money to basically dominate the conversation about Common Core. So look up Robert Scott and look at his testimony on YouTube. It's very worthwhile at your time. So I think, okay, one more question.
Well, let's get a question.
Yes.
I'll just do this. So, if you, no matter how you feel about this, it's good to remember a handwritten letter to your representative counts as 1,000 emails. If you want an impact on your representatives, 100 handwritten letters will get their attention. Do the math. You don't have to figure it out in your thing, just do the math. And if you want it to go statewide, get on Facebook, get on your emails, get on your smartphones, and share the information and get it out there. The parents in this state are the people responsible for the education of their children, not the government school, but you, the parents. If you want to say so, and you want your children to have a good education that has the same values and gives them the same information that you got, maybe a little bit more than maybe you got because maybe you were kind of zoned out from time to time, but you know what I'm saying, then you have to take the reins and you have to get involved. You have to do exactly what your new principal, I'm sorry, what is your?
I'm the superintendent last week.
Superintendent last, and what is your name?
It's Bill McCabe.
Bill McCabe. Okay, for those of you who've never seen him, I have not. There he is. And thank you so much for being here. But that's the impact. And if there are slots on the school board here and your particular school board, if you're sitting here and you're not on the school board, why not? So, somebody has to do it, so why not you?
And the filing date is Friday.
Well, I want to say just quickly to the Superintendent Cave, and other school officials who are here. I really appreciate you coming tonight. It's not easy for folks. It's not easy for folks, officials at the local level, to have to, all of a sudden be thrust into this position of implementing a regime that they really didn't have a whole lot of impact in creating. And so therefore, you're forced to deal with what you have, right? But do it in the best way possible. And, so I understand, your position on this. When I first met Carol Byers in Carson City at the...
And Delight.
At the Carson City Governor's Mansion for a Common Core forum. We had the superintendent of the Carson City School District who spoke. And, again, it's mostly Tea Party folks and, folks who, did not have a great opinion of Common Core, okay? And so I really had sympathy for the superintendent of Carson City, because, he had to present this nuanced position about, being a local official thrust into this situation of having to deal with this new regime. And so it's difficult, so I understand that. And that's why I think that, it's very easy, I think, on a rainy night, Tuesday night, to simply stay home, watch a ball game on cable TV and not come to a meeting like this, and hear somebody like me drone out for a couple of hours. But, I appreciate you taking the time and creating that dialogue. So thanks for coming out.
Well, thank you.